Hi, my name is Brandie, and I'm 37 years old, and I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was in the relationship for 5 years, and I just left in February of this past year. I met my ex on Christian Mingle, a dating website. I had just actually came to Christ myself a few months before, so I thought that it was a good idea to go ahead and try to pursue finding a Christian man. This certain individual had sent several emails to me, and I was very hesitant to respond at first. And he was very persistent with the emails. His words were very eloquent, and so I went ahead and took him up on this date. We went out. It was the best date actually I've ever had. He was very nice. It was very easy to speak to him. It was really a wonderful time. So I definitely was, up to going out on the second date with him. He had helped with doing things at the church, just routine things like helping get things together for the ministry, the worship team. Everything was going well until about 4 to 6 months into the relationship. And then at that time, the psychological abuse had started. He was very verbally abusive, berated me several times, had pushed me around, dumped my articles, that were in my purse on the floor, broke several of my cell phones, was actually very good with computers, and he had hacked into my iTunes account and completely deleted everything on my phone while I was driving. He would say things to biblically manipulate me, and I was just a new Christian, and I was just trying to be the best one that I could be. I looked to him as a Christian man and somebody that God had brought into my life. So I continued to follow his lead and just continued to try to fix myself, thinking that things were wrong with me. It was probably 6 months after the engagement that I had decided to make a phone call to his house. I prayed and asked God to please bring light to my situation. I wasn't sure what was going on, but just something felt wrong. He had said that his parents didn't like me. I wasn't sure why. I had thought that I had a good relationship with his mother and his father, and there was no problems there as far as I could tell. So he kept me away from his family as well. And he said, just follow his lead. Everything will come together when the time is right and when God feels the time is right for us all, to reunite and be back together. I went ahead and made a phone call to his house and spoke with his mother, who was not aware of anything that was going on at all. He was with his girlfriend at the time. 7 years is what she had told me, and he was with me for 3 at that time. He was living a double life. He was engaged to me, and he was living with another woman. He kept us apart by, us not being on social media, so we didn't really know anything about each other. There were suspicions, but nothing that I could really prove. The other woman left. I continued to stay in the relationship only because he had told me that God was able to make things that were a mess into something beautiful. So I believed that God could heal our relationship, and I had put so much time and effort into it, I didn't want to just give up. So I continued on forgiving him and trying to work through our problems. About a year after that, the physical abuse started. Sent Pastor an email. He, had told me that he was against abuse, would, definitely address it, but he needed to know who the individual was before he could do anything more about it. I had sent a confidential email not wanting to reveal actually who I was at the time and who he was, because I wasn't sure if I really wanted to go through with pursuing this. I was afraid of what the repercussions would be if he were to find out, or if anybody were to find out actually what was going on in our relationship. It was probably 3 days later I had responded with another email telling him that I had chose to not pursue it any further. I was afraid something, would be worse, like that he really would hurt me this time. So I continued just on in the relationship, and it was April of 2015 when it started getting a lot worse. He would hold me down, grab me by my throat, grab me by the sides of my jaw, slam me up against the wall, hold his hands over my face so I couldn't breathe. If we were arguing, he didn't want me to speak. He told me to just keep my mouth shut and I need to learn my place. I went to the pastor again. I went in person and spoke to him. I was actually very emotional at the time. I was crying and begged him to please help us in a relationship that I knew if something wasn't done, he could eventually, really hurt me and I could maybe possibly end up in the hospital or worse. I thought that he was going to be able to help me, which I found out a week later. He had went to lunch with the pastor and the pastor told him everything that I had said to him that day about the abuse. And in turn, I got the repercussions of that by getting pushed around again, being, slammed up against the wall, being held down with my mouth covered so I could barely breathe. He would sit on my body, throw me around the room. At that point, he told me that I had to leave the church, that I was no longer allowed to attend until I learned my place and I knew how to act. So I withdrew from the church and I also withdrew from my Bible study. When I left the church, I was really hurt by, the pastor not really believing me, re-victimizing me. It was really hard for me to deal with. That was the place where you could go for help. And it just really turned me away from the church for 6 months. And it was hard for me to even go back. In February of 2016, when I had gotten into a new Bible study group from a different church, and they had really gave me a sense of security, and I did open up to one of the women in the group about what was going on with me at the time, and she had told me that this was not what God wanted for me, and this is not a Christian man. Nobody would ever put hands on a woman. That's not biblical. The biblical manipulation and all that was just wrong. So I sat on that for a little while and thought about what she said, and then I had went over to watch a movie with my ex one night, and I had went into his room to change into something more comfortable, and I opened up the bottom drawer and pulled out all kinds of women's clothing. He was on his way home from work, and he came in, and I had the clothes laid out, and I said, "Whose clothes are these?" And he said, "They are my mother's." I said, "Why would they be your mother's?" And he said, "They just are. If they're not my mother's, I don't know where they came from." I said, "I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm leaving. You can have the other women." He then got angry, came at me, grabbed me by the sides of my jaw, slammed me up against the wall, and threw me over the couch. I tried to get back up. He grabbed me by my face again and slammed me against the wall again. I got up, I ran into the kitchen to try to get away from him, and he ran towards me, grabbed me, slammed me against the cupboard, and then grabbed me again by my jaw and somehow busted my lip when he was slamming me against the cupboards. I heard his brother coming down the hall. I grabbed my things and I left, and I never had returned back. I had also went and filed a PFA, which is a protection from abuse. Went back a week later for a permanent PFA for a year, and that was also granted. I had several pictures, dental records, text messages, lots of evidence to provide the police with if I was going to go forward with pressing charges, which at that time I did not. I expected the church to take care of it because that was where we would actually, bring our problems for counseling. That the church did not do anything about it. The church actually turned over all the corresponding emails from me and the associate pastor to my ex to use against me, saying that I was trying to give him a bad reputation and trying to remove him from the church, which I was not doing. I just felt that there needed to be some type of correction. I also sent the pictures and things like that to the pastor for evidence to show that I wasn't making this up. This has been going on. I had called you to address it several times before. Why would I be making this up? After the church had decided not to do anything about it, I then decided to take it to criminal charges. The police would not file the report at that time because it had been approximately a month and a half after the situation. I then had to go speak to the assistant district attorney before they would press any charges or write up any type of report. I got the okay from the assistant district attorney, and I went and was able to file the charges with my advocate and a friend from church. They said that they were going to do an investigation and they would be back in touch with me. They called me several weeks later saying that they had completed their investigation and that they had spoken with people who had knew my ex and said he was not capable of the type of behaviors that I was accusing him of. They discounted any of the evidence that I had brought for them. They really did no justice for me. I pretty much was re-traumatized continually over and over. I didn't feel that it was important to them. I also felt that they really didn't care because he was such a good guy, so to say. He, like I said, was very active in his church. He was on the worship team at church. He helped with the kids. He was really good friends with the associate pastor. The police, they didn't feel that he could do something like this. It's really hard to get out of a situation like this. People will say that you're making things up. I've been told several times that no one would believe me, but there are people out there who will believe you, and there is help out there, and you just have to reach out and find a good support group and follow through with it. A woman's place for me now would be to just continue to heal and speak out for other people who, could be in the same situation that I just got out of, and then continue to help others.